Richard Hurley, interviewed by Cindy Taylor.
So nice to see you.
Thank you.
When did you come to town and what brought you to town?
Well, I was living in Bridgeport and I got on the State Police Academy and I graduated. I thought I'd go to Westport, but my papers said Westbrook. I said to the lieutenant, you made a mistake. I live 10 miles from Westport, and 60 miles almost to, he said, no mistake, you report there tomorrow morning. I never even heard of Westbrook. So I was a patrol officer on the highway, which I didn't like. I wanted to be a detective. And Tom Nickel was resident trooper, and Commissioner Mulcahy was living here in Old Lyme at Rogers Lake, and Tom Nickel became his aide. And he was leaving his job. He says, Dick, he came to my house. We lived on the same street. The houses were built by Frank Corsino, brand new, lovely starter houses. And he says, why don't you put in for the resident trooper job? And my wife was there. I said, I'm only on 3 years. Usually you got to be 5. He said, I can take care of that. I said, I don't want to. He said, you get $75 extra tax-free, your phone is free, and your insurance on your house is free. My wife says, he'll put his papers tomorrow morning. So Tom introduced me to a few people in town, and they spoke to the commissioner, and I got the job. But one interesting thing, Old Lyme changed my whole career in the state police. I was on 3 days, and I caught 4 bad guys breaking into the guy's son's house that recommended me to the commissioner. So these guys were real mobsters from Hartford, so I held them at gunpoint, and I'm calling for help. And I'm up on this dirt road, I was checking cottages, and it was in the fall when all the summer people go and just the local. So no one could understand where I was, a kind of dirt road up at Rogers Lake. And Mulcahy comes on the air, and he was 1HQ on the radio, and that was like God speaking. And he says, I know right where you are. I'll be there in a few minutes and back you up. So he gets there, and I got these guys laying on the ground, and they searched them, and they had guns on them. And they had the wedding gifts of Clyde Menil's son's house they broke into. They were stealing. He was getting married the next week. And the Mulcahy said to me, what's your name, trooper? I said, Richard Hurley. He says, you're a detective. When you're done here as resident trooper, report to headquarters as a detective. I'll have your badge delivered to you tomorrow morning. Well, my heart was going, and that set my whole career being resident trooper, and the newspapers got it all wrong. They thought I was just on the job 3 days, but I was 3 years plus 3 days in town, so they wrote it up big. It was on New York Post, on my picture, it captures these guys 3 days on the job, and it set the town for me. People really embraced me. They said, what a resident trooper we got. So that's my little story I wanted to tell about how much I loved Old Lyme.
Never knew that.
Huh.
Never heard that. Yeah. So how long were you resident trooper?
About 3.5 years.
Okay.
And it was the best time of my career.
And then what did you do?
I went to the detective division in Hartford, and I retired as chief of detectives.
Oh. Okay. And you raised your family here?
Yes, my son and daughter went to the Old Lyme, all the schools and the high school. When they got out of high school, every college they applied for, they were accepted. Old Lyme had a wonderful, has still wonderful education system.
Okay. Well.
And they did very good. My son played soccer, and we had great soccer teams then. We had 2 brothers from South America that came here and were like freshmen, and one was 8th grade, and they could play soccer. So they taught us the winning way and we must have won 8 state championships in a row. And I would go to every game and come home with the school bus, and if I was blowing the siren, everyone knew they won. So I went to all the games, and they used to call, the coach was Gardner, and they used to call them Gardner's Gorillas because they dominated so much. And these South American kids taught them the winning way, so they just continue winning.
Okay. And how's the town changed since you moved here?
Pardon me?
How's the town changed since you moved here?
Oh, Main Street. Oh my God, how it's changed. Where the chocolate shop is, the chocolate shell, that was a drugstore. And the guy that ran that drugstore was from Bridgeport, a young guy, and he partied a lot. And when he partied, he had a room that he'd sleep at the drugstore. I'd go in some mornings after he partied. At 9 o'clock, he'd be shaving and cream all over his face, waiting on people. The next to him was the 2 ladies, I forget their name, Polish ladies that were hairdressers. Everyone in town loved them. And across the street was the Boxwood Manor. Back in the 20s, that was the State Police Training Academy. And there was a famous murder down there years ago, I think in the early 20s, some type of axe murder, I forget the thing. And then next to the chocolate shell was the post office, and now that's some organization is in there. Then the Catholic Church, then the jewelry store, that was the grocery store. Across the street was the hardware store, a guy named Smith, I think. If he didn't have it, you didn't need it. He sold hunting license, fishing license, shotgun shells, and anything you needed in hardware. And as you go down the street, there's the Catholic Church was Christ the King, and my son got married there with his bride was from Eastline. And as you go down from there is the ice cream parlor, and that used to be Saunders, Mert Saunders' garage. I used to repair cars there. And you go down from there, a couple of small houses. They had a little restaurant there, just served breakfast and lunch, mostly counter and blue-collar guys. And then they had the A&P there, was in a 2-story white old farmhouse. And also in that block was a Cleaners that Dick Pendleton's wife ran for years. And I forgot to mention at the Boxwood, they had a restaurant that opened for lunch there. And the family from Lyme ran it. And you wouldn't catch a man in there at noon, they're all women. And he made a very good living out of that in those days. And all that, Tim Griswold, Dr. Griswold, it wasn't Tim, but Dr. Griswold was working on getting everyone over to Halls Road. His vision was to have a commercial road and bring Old Lyme back to where it was 100 to 150 years ago. And one of the oldest houses in town are right on Main Street. Yes, yeah, your home, and it was a beautiful big colonial house. And I have a theory how Old Lyme developed so beautiful. I think this is where the ship captains lived and the sailors lived in Saybrook, because we have some beautiful homes on Main Street and down around the corner there. And so Main Street now is so beautiful, and Griswold moved all these businesses, his vision, over to Halls Road as we know it today. And I'd see him Saturday mornings in the winter with an overcoat on, dressed with his suit, picking up papers in the driveway of the restaurants and stuff on Halls Road. So he had really, I think it's other people, but he's the one I always seen and talked to, how he kept the Main Street the same. And then if you go up a little further, you got the Lime Art Guild, you got the Florence Griswold House with the beautiful art display in the back of that. And they got the beautiful $1 million worth of paintings from the Steam Boiler Insurance Company in Hartford. And part of the deal was before they'd give the paintings to the Florence Griswold thing, they had to build a acceptable building to house these paintings that would have all sorts of controls on the weather and heat. And they did all that, and it's a beautiful building. And they send their art around the world, and they get world-class art back there as different times. And it's 1 or 2 weeks in the fall or winter. Everyone that's local, show your driver's license, you can go in free. And I thought that was nice. And that Florence Griswold house is unbelievable. I mean, it's a gem. And they had concerts out in the back, and they still do on the river. And then you move up from there, and you got the Bee and Thistle, which was a great restaurant. Now that's Torrey Peterson's venue, and they're going to have classes for kids on birds and information there. And that's about it. It's just a beautiful Main Street. And I love Old Lyme, and I never would have moved out of Old Lyme, but I just got old, and I had a 4-bedroom house up at Jericho Hill, and the kids were gone, so we got a senior citizen house we went to.
What are some of the best memories you have in town?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, I have kids come up to me, they got to be 75. Oh, Mr. Hurley, I remember when you ran our Little League. I wasn't a good coach, he said, but you threw great picnics at the end of the season, and we all look forward to your picnics. I think we only won 1 or 2 games, and the other coaches took it real serious. I wasn't that serious with it. And my son had a great experience in this town. Harding Farm up in Lyme, it is, and it's one of the most beautiful farms, I think, in Connecticut when Sam had it.
Yeah.
And I knew his father well. His father was the prosecutor in those days. And I'd meet him when we needed a warrant up in Lyme or something. And Sam, his son, took over the farm. And his wife was the librarian at the middle school. And Michael got along great with her. So he goes up there to Sam and wants a job on the farm. He said, I'm not hiring. And the wife was there. She says, you're hiring, Michael. And she made him hire him. And he'd go up there at a mini bike, and he'd run through the woods up to Sam's and work there. Sam gave him a pair of oxen that he raised, went to all the fairs. After a while, he had a room there, and we'd go up Friday night and wouldn't come home till Sunday. And all the old timers would come there. Dick Lee, the square dance caller, was famous. There was Dr. J, I think he was like 90 years old, lived up in Lyme. Sis Saunders, who played the accordion. They'd meet Sunday mornings, and they had this big family room and fireplace, and they'd sing songs and tell stories, and Michael was exposed to all that. So it was a great experience for him. And one day I go up there, and he's driving bulldozers and trucks. So he's got this big truck coming in loaded with feed. Now I think he's 14 or 15 now. And I said, Sam, what's he doing driving? Oh, he just went up to Norwich to pick up some feed for me. I said, Sam, he can't do that. Oh, there's no problem. That truck's not registered anyway. But that's the way he was. He didn't bother anything, and they'd go to the fairs, and that was a great work experience for him. And he's been a hard worker ever since. And He retired as chief of detectives in Waterford, and now he's the chief inspector for the whole New London County for the state. So I tell him he should wear a mask on payday. He gets 2 retirements.
I didn't realize he followed in your footsteps.
Yeah, he did, but he did better than me. He got his master's. I only got my bachelor's. And my daughter got her master's, and she runs a big financial company in Essex, and has a big building, the first building on the right, so she was very successful. Oh, and my wife used to work at the school 1 day a week, getting kids to save money, saving accounts. She ended up the manager of the Essex Bank in town, and people called it Flo's Bank, not the Essex Bank. And I had some gangsters that used to spend their summers here from Hartford. And I knew them and I talked to them. They weren't committing any crimes here. So then one of them, Archie Chilligan, who ran the Brandmore, he ran a bar in the summer, was living at Miami Beach. He'd go to Flo's Bank on a Friday night with hundreds and say, Flo, I need a lot of 20s. I got a big game. They're coming from all over New England. Don't tell Dick. And that's the kind of town it was. And this guy that was a gangster, he loved to play golf, and he was 80 years old. He never played Black Hall. And I was fortunate enough to be a member of Black Hall, that they have one of the best golf courses in New England at Black Hall, recognized by everyone as a great course. So I said, Archie, would you like to play Black? Oh, I'd love to. I said, I'll pick you up tomorrow. So I pick him up, and take him, we play 18, I give him a lunch, and I drive him home. He gives me a hug, he says, this was the best day of my life.
Oh, that's nice.
So I have a lot of nice stories.
Was there a lot of crime back in town other than the Hartford group?
Oh, no, there was a group of guys, most of the kids were absolutely wonderful, and I enjoyed them. But there was 3 or 4 that real trouble, no fathers, and I could see it coming. And one was shot right up here, killed by the troopers as on Flanders Road years ago. And I seen him grow up, and I seen there would be trouble, but I didn't realize it'd be that bad. And another one got no father. I arrested him many times, and he ended up a shootout with the masked troopers that were killed. So we had a couple of bad guys, but they weren't doing much in town, but they did stupid things. Like the last cattle rustling crime in Connecticut took place in Old Lyme. Donnie Babcock, who else was there? PJ, and there was like 3 guys. Crowley was there, and they go to Harding Farm and steal one of his cows, and in a trailer takes it to Sterling City, and Sterling City was a few bums lived up there, and I forget his name. He comes to my house at 11 o'clock at night and says, Dick, I got in trouble. I want to tell you what we did. I could smell the booze. I said, get out of here. Don't bother me. It's 11 o'clock. You woke me up. He said, we stole some cattle. I says, I'll talk to you in the morning. So I went back to bed. No big thing. So Harding finds the cow missing, calls the TV's there, the newspapers, cattle rustling in Old Lyme, and Crowley comes back and tells me the whole story, what they did and where the cow was. So I said, well, I better take this seriously now. And I get a statement from him, and I arrest him, and I get a couple other troopers, and we go up to Sterling City and arrest a few others, and get the cow back, and big headlines, cattle rustling solved, and the commissioner calls, Dick, I'm sending down a chief of detectives. We got to solve this case. He says, I already got him locked up, Commissioner. He was so pleased, and I spoke for the guy at his trial that turned it over, and he got paroled, like nothing serious. Donnie got like 3 years in state's prison, and he runs away and goes to Chicago and lives there for 3 years. Well, I had so many friends that I befriended in the area, kids growing up and even adults, they didn't forget it. And Babcock comes back, it was in a hotel in Middletown to visit some friends, and he was going to leave the next day. So they tip me, I go up and I arrest him. And it was never personal. It was a job, and he had a job. And he was kind of, could be a hoodlum. And he went to Korea when I was in Korea. We weren't together. And he got the Bronze Star. And I admired him for that. And he came home, and here after he did a few years, he didn't do 3 years. They do like a year and a half in prison. And he straightened himself out and developed a big construction company. And my son worked for him off and on during the summers, building that bank, Liberty, the bank near the Hungry Goose.
Right.
That building, Donnie Babcock built that building, and originally was for an artist with very high ceilings and ceiling lights, and it came out beautiful. And Donnie and I were never really enemies, and we were friends, and even after he went to prison, we were friends. And there's a lot of stories like that. I had a wonderful Lieutenant Leonard, and he told me, don't abuse the prisoners. They're already in trouble. They're not going home tonight. If they ask you for a cigarette, give them one. I thought, well, that's all right. Why was the other? Give me your cigarettes. They take them away and push them into the cell. I thought, that's not the way to treat people. So I always treated criminals with respect, and they treated me with respect. And some of the biggest cases I busted in Connecticut, and I busted a lot of big cases when I was in Hartford, were people that I befriended as young criminals would call and tip me where drugs were, where escapees were. It was unbelievable the help I got by just treating people decent.
That's great.
They made my career.
Well, I remember spending the night at your house and getting a big kick because you would bring me home in the cruiser. And sometimes you even turned the lights on.
Well, my wife got nervous when they put a big sign in front of your house, resident trooper. She says to Tom Nichols, are they going to come to the house? He says, oh yeah, this is their office. For the state police was my house.
I didn't realize that. Okay. Well, yeah. So what year did you actually come to town?
What year?
Yeah.
I think around 1957.
Okay.
I was in Korea from 50 to 53, then 54 on the state police, 3 years, well, 57, yes.
Okay.
And it was starting the fall. All the beach people were living. And, you know, there's two sets of people in Old Lyme, the townies and the beach people. And we used to fight at all over budgets and all of that.
Mm-hmm. What were some of the best things about town for you?
About what?
The best things about town for you.
The best things about town?
The best things, yeah.
School system, government, the selectmen, were all great people. The court system, when I came, there was justice courts, and the court was right in the town hall. And Nancy Budlong from down the beach, but Money Beach area, was the judge, and the prosecutor was Merle Bugby, and his son was a captain in the Marines, and when he left his career, he came back here to town, and I got along so well with my prosecutor and judge, and everything was informal. Well, Dick, this is a friend of Joe's, so we want to nollie this ticket, mostly speeding stuff. Do what you want, you know. So it was like a sometimes we had regular court where it was serious and one kid got sent to reform school, but other than that, it was low-key. We'd meet on like a Tuesday night, and all the courts had these justice courts. And then we went to this state court system, which I never liked. I liked the little court, and then if you had something serious, they'd send it to the big court. But now the big court took over all the little stuff that you could handle in town and made a big deal out of things and gave kids records that would stay for their whole life. But the court system was good. The town did the right thing. The town crew were nice guys. They're all gentlemen. I'd have any one of them to my home. It was just a joy. And the beaches, they were so interesting. Like, they're not surviving now, but White Sands Beach was all Polish people from New Britain. Ellie Grassel's father had a house there on the last street. He was broken English, short Italian guy, and she'd spend her summers at his house before she built one. And in that same beach there was the castle. And Kelly from Hartford, the Democratic town chairman, and Bailey lived there in the winter. The family lived there in the summer, but these two men lived there all winter, and a guy named Pat Ward. And they were the movers and shakers then that controlled Connecticut. Bailey would be in at midnight passing bills, telling them what to pass and what to not. He was a tremendous power. And I used to visit with them in the winter because I had nothing to do, and I'd go down and both throw with them. And Mrs. Mulcahy used to make them apple pie, and I'd bring them the apple pie. So they'd tell me stories, and they said, we're going to make the next women governor in Connecticut, and the only woman in her own right to become governor. And I thought, yeah. And Bailey was a rough, tough guy. I mean, he didn't mix words. And he said to me, you listen, kid, you'll see. And pretty soon she became governor. And then a few years later saying, there's an Irish Catholic up in Boston, and we're going to push for him to be the first Irish Catholic president. I thought, yeah, you hicks here at the beach, have another drink. Well, they were very important in getting it rolling for Kennedy. And he was down here visiting them. I didn't meet him, but him and his brother at their castle in the winter. And one of the Kelly boys married the Roach girl, and that was two big political families combining, and everyone was at that wedding at Christ the King. And Kelly with his Bible, and Pat Ward with their Bible going to the wedding, and Bailey there, and Mulcahy, and governor. Everybody was at that wedding. And Kelly ended up the Democratic national chairman of the party, a fundraiser in Washington, and he was a lobbyist his whole career. He had to be 6'6", 290. She was 5'5" and about 90 pounds, the Roach girl. But there was a famous group there that in that beach. But the next beach was Hawk's Nest, that was owned by one family, and that was all rentals. So there was all mix of different people. Next beach was all Italian, the Casino Beach. And if you weren't Italian, they didn't want you there. And they'd show movies in the barn on weekends there, and had a lot of activities, but they wanted just Italian. Soundview was Irish, and kind of shanty Irish, the blue-collar Irish. And the next beach over was Oline Shores, and that was lace curtain Irish. And they're all Irish, and they had covenants in the deed. If you sold to someone they didn't like, they had first right to buy your property. And you had to be Irish Catholic to live on that beach. They never get away with it today, but that's the way it was then, 50 years ago. And the next beach over from Oh, Colony Beach was in there. That was a Jewish beach. And they had their own synagogue. It's still there, and I understand they still have services there. And all the Jewish people from Hartford went to the Colony Beach, and they didn't want any Irish or Italian, just Jewish people. And they're all nice, and they all got along, but they had their own piece of summer at these different beaches. And our chief of detectives then was Sam Rome. He was kind of famous in Connecticut, criminals, catching criminals. He would be there in the summer and go to that synagogue every weekend. And then we had the summer church, the chapel there. It was an enormous, big church, beautiful inside, but just summer services. But it was packed on Sundays. And Leo Mulcahy, the commissioner, took up the collection on Sunday mornings at that church. And I'd see kids that we blackjacked and locked up and fought with bandages on there, getting their Holy Communion.
You have a lot of interesting stories about town.
Oh, I loved it. I loved Old Lyme. I still do. And you look at Old Lyme, it's an island by itself. Saybrook, nothing but commercial stores, drive-ins, even a dirty bookstore. Niantic, all stores, restaurants and all. Old Lyme is so beautiful, pristine. And there was a woman on the zoning board of appeals that everyone hated. I forget her name, but she didn't let them change anything. The town, you had a form by the rule. She was on the zoning board of appeals, and you were appealing, you didn't have enough land. Too bad, you knew that when you bought it. We're not gonna let you build on it. And she kept the town. It wasn't June Spears. It was some other lady, lived on Main Street. And I think at the time everyone hated her. And she wouldn't give an inch, and she convinced the other people to go with her. And now those people that complained about her are praising her.
That's when they formed the Historic District Commission.
Right. Oh, you're doing a great job. But you got to get after David Vitale to finish that damn house. He's been fooling around with that for 3 years. And it's a sore spot for all the nice houses around him. And he's got the money, he's got an engineering degree, he's got a master's degree, he was superintendent of schools for the prison system. He's no dummy. He could get it done. I don't know why he's dragging it on.
I don't know.
Oh, I hope he
But it is
doesn't.
taking, and it's taking him a while. Yeah, well,
But I think your organization's doing a great thing, keeping the Main Street the way it is.
well, it's interesting down here, especially on Halloween.
Why, they bother them with that?
No, but on average, about 1,000 trick-or-treaters down here now.
Oh, yeah, but no one mad at you.
Nothing
No.
like it
Oh,
used
it's
to
a
be.
safe place.
Nothing like it used to be.
Well, it used to be like Rogers Lake. They'd come from different towns because there was no traffic and they could get in and do a lot of houses at once.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is fun down here. Yeah.
Seems like I've been talking a lot.
That's good. Wind it up. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to share some of my great stories of Old Lyme. Just loved it.
I've
Love
enjoyed hearing them. I mean, I've known you all my life, and I never heard these stories. I love it.
Well,
Thank you.
A lot of stories go untold. There was a woman that broke in a cottage and tried to kill herself, overdosed with drugs, and her husband comes to me and says, I was living at Rogers Lake then, he says, my wife didn't come home last night and she's depressed. I'm worried she might try to kill herself somewhere. So I called the lieutenant and he says, oh, we're not going to send out a big squad for that. Get a couple of firemen and check the area. So I was a little disappointed in that, but I called the fire department and got about 20 guys showed up, and it was winter time, or getting into winter, and all the cottages were closed up in the woods. So I'm walking up through the woods, and I look in the window and I see a foot sticking out under a bed. So I smash the window and go in, and it's her and she's still alive. And we call the ambulance, and she survived and got over her depression and stayed with her husband for 30 years till she died. Well, every day, every year, the day that I found his wife for him, he would come to my house for the gift.
Wow.
And no one knows that story, you know, it
No.
was that she did this.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I really loved old Lyme.
Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
You got